Well, we'll do this webinar from the Open Group. Today is focusing on process control automation. See, we've got a great panel presenting today, and before I hand over to Jim Group, I'd just like to go a few housekeeping issues to keep this event moving forward smoothly. First, regards to questions, and of course we would encourage you to ask questions. The way to do that is if you write your question into the QA text facility. If you write in there, then we'll try and answer as many questions at the end of today's presentations. Today is also being fully recorded, so for any reason you have to leave early, or if you experience any local technical difficulties, and I know sometimes the audio can drop in and out around the globe, then a full recording of today's event will be available tomorrow, and who's registered will get an email with a link to where they can access that recording. Jim, if you're ready, can I ask you to start today's presentation?
Sure, and welcome everyone. So today's topic is a recap of content presented at an industry day for end users that was held at ExxonMobil on June 27th. There's a little bit of additional content that's new that will be presented. So let me walk through the agenda quickly. First speaker, Don Bartusiak, will to the business problem and the vision for a solution from ExxonMobil's perspective. Speaker Dennis Stevens will talk to the experience of the avionics industry and the FATE consortium in a similar problem area approach in their partnership with ExxonMobil that will be taken. That'll be followed by Mike Hickey with the Open Group, who will talk to principles for customer supplier standards consortium formation and next steps towards formation of this forum. So with that, let me, and we will have time for Q&A at the end, hopefully, so please do submit some questions. So let me get yours up, Don, and invite you to go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Don Bartusiak. I'm the Chief Engineer for Process Control with ExxonMobil Research and Engineering. Pull the slides, Jim? Yeah, great. Okay, so the problem that we're trying to solve is that for ExxonMobil refining and chemicals, a significant percentage of our basic regulatory control equipment is going to enter a state of obsolescence over the next decade, requiring a very large and expensive program to replace. That's our fundamental motivation for calling for change of the process control systems technology. This problem and motivation aligns well with the problem that our upstream colleagues have, that those of you who participate in the industry will have heard many talks from Sandy Vesser, really driven at the business problem of lowering capital costs of new facilities construction. These motivations have come together nicely as this work has progressed. But if I get into what our vision is, let me address the question of what's wrong with simply replacing your old equipment with currently available distributed control systems technology. And I want to address that question directly. These are some of the fundamental technical and business root causes that we're trying to address. Number one, one of the reasons why we tend to fall so far behind the capability of Moore's Law in computing equipment is that it's so difficult and so expensive for us to replace control computers given the current architectural principles and means to deliver these systems. Second problem, and this is largely attributable to the communications protocols used, it's very expensive to integrate third-party, best-in-class components into systems that we need to control our manufacturing processes. Attribute number three that we're trying to address is that when we look back over, let's say, about 20 years or so of history, we find that most of the value-adding innovations in software are delivered in our system at the level of the computers above the distributed control system, the so-called level 3 in the Purdue reference, the Purdue architecture as depicted on the left. It's a problem we're trying to address. And the last point, and this is not a criticism of today's systems, it's a sign of the times. We like to have security features, cybersecurity protection mechanisms designed and built in rather than bolted on. So these are some of the root causes of the problems that we're trying to address. So our journey to solve this problem really began in 2010 with a research project that we started that was tasked with significant reductions in the cost to replace these systems. Secondly, doing what we can to enable the increase of value contribution from the control system. And the objective that's not stated on the slide, it's an important one, is to do what we can to keep our brownfield facilities competitive against new construction going on around the world. So as we've done this work, this research work over the years, there have been a number of significant influences on us that I'd like to just recognize here. Number one is the work that our colleagues in upstream have done. Number two is the kind of creative destruction or constructive revolution, I've used that phrase, that we've witnessed in the avionics industry, where they have moved from a closed proprietary architecture for their avionics systems toward open and interoperable architectural concepts that we think is a very compelling example for us to follow. And Dennis Stevens is going to talk about that later this morning. Third influence has been changes in the way that virtualization and software-defined networking are applied. We see it particularly in telecommunications that delivers high availability without the requirement for purpose-built hardware, a significant trend on us. We're seeing cybersecurity innovations coming out of the marketplace, basically at the hardware level. We'd like to get those innovations incorporated into the new system. And really kind of a mega trend that I know all of the suppliers in our space are witnessing is what will be enabled by Internet of Things, wireless and cloud computing concepts. So a significant milestone for us occurred in the first half of 2014 where my colleague Steve Bitar took aside a team of some of our most imaginative engineers and a couple of industry consultants. They wrote 3 documents, a case action, a narrative of functional characteristics that we would like to have, and a reference architecture. And we first shared that information at the 2015 ARC Forum in February. And having that clarity of message really deepened the dialogue that we've been having with multiple suppliers going back to late 2010 when we started advocating and testing, is this change feasible? So in words, our vision is stated here on slide 4. What we want to have is standards-based, open, secure, and interoperable process control architecture. Now, in the interest of time, I'm not going to verbalize the 5 attributes that are listed as sub-bullets there. You can read the slides as a presentation record. The system that we aspire to have shall be applicable both in brownfield and greenfield facilities. We do not want an ExxonMobil only system. The end result of this initiative shall be a commercially available system. ExxonMobil has its ways of achieving competitive advantage. It's not in the system itself. And with respect to timing, it is our goal to have a system that is ready for field deployment by year-end 2020 to help address our schedule constraints regarding the replacement projects. A picture of our vision for the system is illustrated here on slide 5. I'll just highlight the novel aspects that are in yellow. The DCN is an acronym that stands for Distributed Control Node. We envision a single channel device that performs configurable input-output processing as well as basic regulatory control enabled by peer-to-peer communications among DCNs across an industry standard real-time service bus that is depicted in the middle of this chart. The upper left-hand part of the chart is where we have the Real-Time Advanced Computing Platform, acronym RTAC, which is where we envision the innovative approaches to the problem using virtualization and software-defined networking to take place. And we haven't found a good way of visualizing this, but again, the cybersecurity innovations that we see, both software means and hardware means, we'd like to have designed into these new features, new characteristics of the system to provide us the security protection that we require. Now, so what is the current state of our initiative? And that's what this chart is meant to depict. So November of 2015 is when we awarded the contract to Lockheed Martin to provide to us systems engineering design services and help us to prototype this system and again lead into the commercialization of a system that has these architectural characteristics. And Dennis Stevens will elaborate on Lockheed Martin's capabilities later, so I won't go into that any further. In January of 2016, we announced the Lockheed Martin contract and held an Industry Day for Suppliers meeting in Bethesda, Maryland. Again, I'm going to allow Dennis to comment on what Lockheed Martin has done specifically with this initiative when he gets up on the podium after me. I'm just going to brief mention that we've also been testing. Do other end user companies share similar motivations? So I've commissioned industry studies by Frost and Sullivan to help validate our motivations and approaches. We shared an update of this initiative at the 2016 ARC Forum, and since that communication at the ARC Forum, we've had in excess of about 40 end-user companies approach us with explicit statements of interest in participation in the initiative. And again, when Mike Hickey gets up, we'll talk more about that. In March of this year, we began working in earnest with the Open Group, just to kind of connect some dots. So Lockheed Martin and the Open Group are key contributors to an industry consortium in avionics, the FACE consortium, that again Dennis is going to elaborate on, and I'm also going to invite Mike Hickey to highlight the unique and differentiating approaches that the Open Group takes to standards exercises. So I'm not going to comment any further here. As Jim Hytella said in his opening remarks, on June 27th here in Houston, we held Industry Day for Users 1, again, really to reach out explicitly to the end user community. So this slide addresses plan, schedule, and next steps. And this is an attempt to answer a question I've gotten a lot over the past couple of months from various people. So what's happening here in this initiative, there's two parallel tracks that's underway. So in the top part of this chart, you see the work that we're doing with Lockheed Martin that's really addressed at helping us bootstrap the basic systems engineering and also building of the proof of concept prototype. An update, and I want to come clean on a point here with the community. So in the Industry Day for Suppliers meeting, we had said we were going to issue the request for proposal for the prototype in June. We're running about 3 months behind schedule for reasons that are entirely attributable to ExxonMobil. But the plans for prototype building that were communicated in January of this year to the supplier community are still in effect. It's just we're running a little bit behind schedule. Parallel to this is our work to start up a consortium, a collaboration, an open group forum for basically a working title for it is the Open Secure Automation Forum. So right now you basically see ExxonMobil, Lockheed Martin, and the Open Group there as a triplet. what I would like to do is to get this consortium, call it what you will, the Open Secure Automation Forum, up and running in about the November 2016 timeframe. And Mike Hickey is going to talk about that later this morning. And basically, in summary, in conclusion, what's really important for us right now as a priority is to communicate this message clearly and generate a critical mass of end user demand for what this vision is to help us address our business problems. And with that, I'll conclude. We're going to take questions at the end of the hour, and I'll give the floor to Dennis Stevens.
This is Dennis Stevens from Lockheed Martin, and I've got the pleasure of working with ExxonMobil as well as the consortium, the FACE consortium. Just a quick point of information. This consortium, of which we're basing at least the initial open architecture work on, has been formed back in 2010. It's been running for about 5 or 6 years now. It has formed both technical and business practices for open architecture as applied to avionics systems. One of the things that we've found is the commonality between the problem set of industrial automation and this type of both technical and business problems that exist in the avionics world. So close that it was just almost a no-brainer that the concepts, both business and technical, would be applicable to this market space as well. As we have our foot, I would say we have our foot in both the prototype development activity directly for Exxon, as well as supporting the automation consume as we move forward, and I wholeheartedly support both of those. Just as another point of reference, my position in the FACE consortium is chairman of the business working group. So I have a chairman of the technical working group, an elected position. It is a non-fiduciary position with respect to the open group organization. I've been elected by my peers of the organization, the membership. Slide, please. So this is of a breakthrough system. Three factors in my long career in this business. There's been three factors that have governed the genesis of a breakthrough system. That is the lead visionary to execute that vision, and then the environment that supports that. And there's several major breakthroughs over the years that require those three. ExxonMobil is the lead visionary. Don and his team have not only come up with the concepts and the ideas, but they've documented them, as you had said earlier, and in a clear and concise manner of what they're looking for from a technical and a business perspective, objectives they need to create, and truly in a visionary manner. And it's been a pleasure, it is a pleasure to work with these folks. Very astute, they know what they're doing, clear vision with respect to this project. I'm very impressed with them. Martin is the lead system integrator. Lockheed Martin works on complex problems, complex solutions, and practices and procedures in place to achieve the solutions to those complex problems, of which this falls into, and we'll talk more about that in a few moments. And then the third factor is the environment, the factors that enable a breakthrough system. And if you look at the technical and business environment that exists today, the emergence of multi-core processing, the emergence of software modularity, the emergence of standards and standards consortiums, all these factors are coming in place to create the environment for success. Just a quick example, 20, 30 years ago, major corporations came up with a handheld device, and it had a lot of the capabilities, if not all, of what you have in your iPhone today. There wasn't a communications environment, a communications infrastructure to pass that information peer-to-peer around. So it was an interesting experiment, but the environment wasn't there. Where we are today is the environment exists to support and move this project forward. Slide, please. The goals of what we're trying to achieve and will achieve is First of all, the identification and qualification of the key performance parameters that are essential to achieve success. And those goals are focused on the interfaces, on architecture principles, key attributes of the system, from adaptability through modularity, scalability, interoperability. Those aren't just words. They're very important factors. For example, modularity, the ability to create a system. The individual modules are form, fit, and functionally replaceable, and for offering the ability of a large industrial base to support the system. So if we look at the system from a modularity point of view, design it correctly with standardized interfaces and layered architectural principles, we'll be able to achieve the ability for the industrial base to support such a system on a modular basis. Portability, looking at portability, transportability between systems. We want to get away from the one-off approach for each individual instantiation of the system and be able to build a system. We move from operation to operation in the sense that we're not starting over again or having to do extensive configuration. The ability to use the basic system on a small site and use fundamental constraints of the system to be able to apply to large sites as well, again, without having to start over again. And the ability to exchange information, things like the industrial Internet of Things, to be able to communicate through standardized data models, standardized APIs, standardized data formats. And then, of course, security, safety, and reliability to take advantage of the uses that we have today in areas. Please. Martin approaches this for Exxon and all of our customers with a very methodical process as shown here. I'll go through the details of it, but suffice to say, it is a very structured approach to solving complex problems, and at one of these junctures, we produce documentation to be able to recreate and to provide our customer with the fruits of the individual making up the structure process. Where we are today is in that RFI and RFP activity as well as the prototype build. So the sole portion there is we are working with the slide base today. Next slide. Slide, please. Okay. So schedule and where we've been and where we're headed. Concept development, as Don had touched on, in that 2014 and prior to 2015, leading up to 2015, and then placing us under contract to develop the preliminary system requirements, performance specs, conduct trade studies on buyer responses that were received, lead to development of the fundamental system architecture, and then conduct RFI evaluation as we move into the prototype demo to place a prototype system in Exxon facility for testing and evaluation, and understand what works and what doesn't work, what's successful and not, and modify those that not work so that we can then move into defining the objective system requirements, ultimately leading into a system design and field trials in the 2018 time frame. We're moving along this path and very pleased with the progress to date. And what I would say is parallel to this is the FACE, I'll use the word FACE consortium or the automation consortium, is moving in that as an overarching structure to view the pieces, data models, business practices that would be utilized, as Don said, for this to be commercialized and used by industry and produced by industry. So a common set of standards and bring many players into the market space. Slide. Jim, next slide, please.
It's going up in a second.
So this is the objective today. that we're following. Don had said the real-time advanced computing platform is taking advantage of the massive increase in performance of processing today in memory and architecture. Green boxes are the open standards, and that will be the focus of the commission to modify or generate and codify those open standards so all parties can play. We're focused on the control network. We call it a high-speed data bus. And again, we're not going to create a proprietary solution there. We're looking to utilize open standards. Distributed control node on the lower bottom is a concept, allows access to information and formatting that information and ultimately control at a very low level. Was not the standard today as far as operations, and so offering capability that just doesn't exist today. The interface to the green interface over to the human-machine interface, the HMI, and this is a standard approach. There's a lot of HMIs out there. We're not looking to reinvent HMIs. We are looking for a gateway or a way to interface with those. Having said all that, let me go open on hat on for a second. And what was the expectation in the FACE consortium? Is that industry, both the supply base and the user base, come together in the consortium. And, for example, this architecture is a starting point. We say as we debate it, we argue it, the agreement under a very controlled manner, run by, in this case, the open group, a very controlled process, and then ultimately codify on the open standard. We codify and publish it. We're looking to create a new standard. That's two key points I want to make, and one of them is we're not looking to a white sheet of paper and generate a new standard. There are plenty of standards out there. What we did in the avionics world is we took the existing standards and we picked what the membership felt was the best of the best, and primarily from a technical point of view, but also we looked at it from a business point of view of what we could and could not. And so the body of the industry and users together and develop the FACE standard for avionics on, like I said, existing standards. So we call FACE a standard of standards. And the ideal, that was what we could do here. Take existing standards where they exist, and then use them in this activity. If standards don't exist, if there's some type of interface that does this, then our technical group, the technical membership, will roll our sleeves and generate that technical standard, run it through the approval process, of which members get a vote, and then ultimately approve it or modify it prior to approval, or reject it. Slide, please. Looking forward now to put my pro back on. The tactical portion is supplier attributes of what we're looking for with respect to the Exxon project. Is we are looking for suppliers that have the ability to adhere to open architecture standards, have the intrinsic ability to develop and deliver products. I mean, they got to have the basic capability. A great idea is great, but if you can't produce it, not interested. Experience in this market space, ability to provide prototype hardware and software to support lab integration, which would include potentially, having personnel come on site to support the integration. And so we do it with our other customers and suppliers. Now, this is the next point I want to make. Ability, because this point is a lot of people get confused of when they think about open architecture and open system. So I have here the ability to provide unrestricted licenses to the hardware-software interfaces. Functional replaceability. Core business logic can be proprietary. A lot of folks equate an architecture and open systems to, I'm going to lose my IP, my business case is going to go down the tubes, and I'm going to be out of business. It could be farther from the truth. What we're trying to achieve is form, fit, functional replayability. Again, getting back to that modularization. The inputs and the outputs, the data models that describe those, the forms of physical infrastructure or physical connections, things of that nature counts. Really, those will be open. What's closed, what can be closed and is acceptable to be closed or proprietary is the business logic side of that module. And one is asking for the business logic inside of that module that one has invested their own funds on to just disclose that to the world. So that's a point, and in the consortium there'll be a lot of discussion about that. So for that discussion to that point in time, but suffice to say, not looking to take your IP. And then you need to manage obsolescence. Very important, the cycle times of chips today, microcircuits, microelectronics, EEPROMs, etc., is relatively short. So what we make sure is when we put a system together or we define a system, and getting back to supplier attributes, we want to make sure that we don't build a system that will be orphaned in 2 years or 4 years, and then we have diminishing supply chain problems. So we're just real heavy on the ability to manage obsolescence. Next slide, please. This slide, and it's meant to be more of an overall approach or how we're looking at the problem, and how and SOSA stands for Sensor Open Systems Architecture. So this looks at the internal software and what we've done to achieve those 5 goals that I talked about a few charts back. Segmentation of the system is we've segmented the face architecture into 5 segments: the operating system, the portable component segment, specific services segment, I/O services segment, and transport services segment. None of the details of what each of those means, because that's a whole 2-hour discussion in and of itself. But the essence is in the consortium, we've broken up the software processing architecture into those 5 segments and define what are called units of portability. These are utilization of software elements that fall in each of those segments. And what it allows is the industrial base to create modules within those segments in a form and functionally replaceable manner. So Sensor Open System Architecture, it's a relatively newer initiative focusing on the hardware side and replayability of hardware elements and interfaces with respect to hardware. So this is an example that's already in process and working. This is offered up to the automation consortium, the folks in the automation world, as a starting point. But we look to the automation consortium to modify it and add their capabilities or add their desires in both technical business and modifying it to meet the needs of automation. But it's a starting point. That's the end of my presentation. I'll now turn it over to Mike Hickey. Thank you.
I just made you presenter, Mike.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Dennis. All right, welcome. I'm Mike Hickey. I'm a director with the Open Group. That's a fairly generic title, but what it basically means is I get to do a lot of different things with both our emerging and existing standards efforts, including, we've heard quite a bit about today already, the FACE Consortium. And I was fortunate enough to be involved with that since it was a phone call inquiry to the Open Group from one of your customers, the U.S. Navy, that had sort of come up with the concept of what they wanted in FACE. And that was way back in 2008, 2009 timeframe. And as Dennis said, 6 years later, we have a very mature and maturing standard and ecosystem around that. So I'm going to quickly summarize our going forward. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on the Open Group, And hopefully a good flavor that what we intend to do is to build on the good work you've already heard from ExxonMobil and Lockheed, but also on the good work that each of your companies and standards bodies have done. So many of you know who the group is. Some of you are already members of the Open Group. Some of you use any one or number of Open Group standards or have in your past. Some might not know much about us. So we're a global standards body. We've been around for 25 plus years. We're made up of over 500 member organizations. And since we have many companies represented on this webinar, since I saw the registration list beforehand, I think you'll appreciate that we are quite a collaboration in a global environment, which I'm sure will be. So basically, tagline, making standards work. And the Open Group, we have a standard description of how we start things, which starts with ideally customer need, but it can also be a vendor need. How to develop standards and build certification programs to help drive adoption. I'd like to point out, as Dennis already mentioned, that we have particular experience as the FACE example in building a standard of standards where we use other existing standards, and that is certainly our objective in this case. And when you get to the certification process, the Open Group actually has our own certification team, and we can work with our members to develop the appropriate program to sort of conformance to the standard. And this can be one extreme or the other or anywhere in between. We have very formal certification programs where test suites, test regimes, third-party testing are involved. On the other extreme, we have assertions of conformance. So we have everything between, but most importantly, there's got to really be market adoption of certified products to drive value to both the customers and the suppliers. We've got examples, some of which or all of which you may be familiar with. You've already heard the FACE example mentioned several times in detail. Our edge in the Open Group is the development of the original single Unix standard, including all of the associated activities around that standard and the building of the ecosystem. And that includes test suite development for POSIX as well as Unix. We've also developed standards and certification programs for enterprise architecture. TOGAF has become one of the things we're best known for of late. And again, with FACE, where we have developed a standard of standard that started with requirements but has morphed into a true collaboration and partnership of most of the supply base open standard that really has changed the way business is being done in that marketplace. What are the commonalities that we see in successful standards? I just mentioned three of us that we are very successful, but we talked to the end users in Houston at the end of June about the fact that all of these standards that are successful, whether it's an Open Group standard or any other one, have to create market opportunity and a win-win through it for both the customers and the suppliers. And we ensure success by making sure that side leadership is involved while maintaining an open and vendor-neutral government structure. You heard Dennis mention, I'll talk a bit about more in my presentation, for fairness to suppliers. Solution helps ensure interoperability and customer trust. Business such as IP, business guidance, outreach must be part of it, and we found that this is often an element with good technical standards that don't achieve any success, which the standard world seems to be littered with these. And Dennis talked a bit about how we achieve that in the FACE consortium. Procurements based on the standard should be built and need to create value for the vendors who invest in the standard. And these these are the traits that we think will help avoid a version of shelfware that we can see a lot of in the marketplace. So structured in the open group, we've got forums of the open group. These are one of the categories of initiatives, standards initiatives. You've probably heard of some, but not all of these. And some of your companies, as I said, I know are members of these. But each one produces their own open standards, reference architectures, guidance documents, white papers, and/or people certifications to support procurement. We all have 3 verticals. These are 2 of them, healthcare and experts in mining and minerals forum. These are focused on a particular problem in a particular industry. And then you've heard Dennis mentioned before the FACE Consortium. That is a consortium of the open group along with DirectNet Task Force. These are focused on customer needs in the United States Department of Defense. So there's some unique participation rules that we have to put in place so that you can, so in U.S. law, but everything we publish is open. And Dennis mentioned before the SOSA initiative that's incubating under FACE, and the unique thing there is SOSA, while the FACE standard is hardware agnostic, SOSA is actually guiding with their standards around the hardware along with electromechanical aspects. So our approach in the open group is that we are forming this automation forum, which is a notional name, to enable development of open, secure automation framework. To doing so under an organization like the Open Group are numerous, including especially rapid formation and getting about the work quickly. But I'd like to call out one particular item in the second bullet that seems to resonate with many in your markets from our discussions over the last few months, and that is the Open Group standards process. You'll hear about that more in a little bit, but it is really set up to help forge consensus, prevent blocking, so that you can move forward progress in standards development. We just keep hearing story after story, and it's not unique to our discussions over the last few months, but there are just several standards initiatives out there that just can't seem to find traction, whether it's from the current user adopters or the vendors, and the process is set up specifically to keep forward progress. Our concept of operations, how are we going to operate the automation forum? We'll be a national body, operate by the proven open group standards process for review, approval, and publication of standards and other publications of the forum. We'll get done by meeting face-to-face as frequently as reasonably possible. We'll use WebEx in between to progress the work. This is how we do everything in the open group. We couldn't have good progress if we did everything virtually, and no one could afford to meet face-to-face all the time. So we find a balance is to establish the minimum number of face-to-face meetings per year that a group requires, and then supplement that with WebEx virtual meetings in between as frequently as every single working group or subcommittee under forum needs to get their work done in between the face-to-face meetings. Adapt existing open standards whenever possible, and this is a key to our approach. You heard, I believe, both Don and Dennis mention it before, but this is an open group, so we don't think it's worth our members' time and money to come to the open group to develop something that already exists and that we're enabled to use that's out of the open group. And the key is what we'll develop under this forum is not going to just be a technical standard. You as members will develop business guidance that's going to enable broad adoption and implementation of the standard. You'll help our certification staff develop the right type of program and testing regime that'll underpin the success for your market, and that will be a little different than other ones we've done in the past, but each one has the unique basic characteristics and needs. Okay, I'm going to go pretty quick through these next slides. I want to leave plenty of time for question and answer, but just want the message here to be that we've come up with some null, i.e. draft, vision and mission statements. They're notional and draft because it's going to be up to you as members at your first meetings to take words, change around, and make sure that the firm mission and vision reflect exactly what you want and need from this. I've put up a slide you've already seen. I borrowed this from Don and ExxonMobil colleagues, but just again to make the point that day one, we're not going to be starting with a blank whiteboard and everyone throw in ideas of what this architecture is going to look like. We'll start with a notional architecture diagram, thanks to the good work that ExxonMobil, Lockheed, and many of you have already done, and that's going to enable a lot of rapid process compared to other standards where you are starting from a blank screen, so to speak. The bits to end users, we got a lot of great feedback from the end users who were at the June meeting, and we've characterized these here. So these are the benefits of actual participation in the development of the Open Secure Automation Initiative. But again, I'll stress one item. This initiative will be a coalition of you, the end users, your fellow end users, and suppliers. There's always going to be a bit of give and take, as Dennis said we've always had in the face consortium, but following our process, it results in a balance at the end. And the benefits to suppliers, ultimately, any supplier of product needs to see value in the and getting it early. The founder enables you to help shape the reference architecture itself, and as Dennis alluded to in the early days of the FACE consortium meetings, even though we were starting with a concept that came from the customer side, the vendor suppliers certainly helped to shape every bit of that reference architecture that's become the FACE technical standard, and so we would expect to have the same benefits to you as suppliers. Mentioned several times the Open Group Standards process. It is available on our website. You'll see the link there, and I welcome any of you to go take a look at it and download it. I think the main point here is that this is a timely and deterministic process that enables forward progress while developing standards. And I'll give you a word of warning on this timeline slide. This is kind of a working internal timeline that one of my colleagues developed, and its purpose was to show that we're capable of an aggressive timeline to publish an initial done through consensus, even in something that seems as complex as this initiative. But what pointed out here along the way are a few key time items. We had the industry day for customers. We're having a public webinar today. You've heard mentioned we intend to have a kickoff member meeting in November, and we'll be following that up with multiple launch events in 2017 to continue to get eyes and ears on what we're doing in the forum. I'll mention one other item that didn't get on the slide, but we're in the process of finalizing an industry day for users too, thanks to all the interest we got from users who could not attend our June event. So we're tentatively looking at August 23rd in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area, and I think we're days away from getting that confirmation. So once we do, many of you are interested in that and you are an end user, please send me an email. We'll make sure you get an invite. And we want to continue to build out the coalition of end user customers who agree with the vision that Don has gone so thoroughly in his earlier slides. So our call to action for you. Our call to action is to actually commit to becoming a founding member of this groundbreaking initiative and join us. Joining to make things happen in a positive way means actually committing the right mix of business and technical participants, and even putting up yourself or others for leadership positions. So welcome that. We want you to mark your calendars for the November 15 to 18th founding first member meeting. We intend to have that in San Francisco, on with the American of Chemical Engineers meetings, where we know there's going to be a bit of overlap, and it'll be on the tail end of that meeting. Those of you that are end users that would like to attend the later in August meeting in the Philadelphia area, please send me an email. And if you send an email to that address, I can get you all the information you need in order to join. Joining the Open Group is a corporate membership. You don't join as an individual, and our fees vary from anywhere for a corporation from $2,500 a year up to $20,000 a year, depending upon the size and type of organization you are. So I can get you all the details on that and where you fall in that scheme. I'd like to thank you, and we'll go over to Jim to address the questions to the panels.
Okay, Mike. So this question, I guess I'll direct this to you, Don. Is it the intent of this initiative to the common process control framework that can apply across the board to a wide range of industry sectors? I know you've talked to a number of different customers in different industries. You should unmute yourself, Don.
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah. Absolutely yes, Jim.
There's a couple of questions about system availability being perhaps missing as one of the key system requirements or attributes. And I guess Dr. Dennis, feel free to chime in on that.
Well, I certainly won't make any compromises on availability requirements. These concepts are vigorously debated, but it is not. Availability is not something we've been challenged, even with anything we've written so far or the reference architecture. I could probably talk about this for an hour, but I won't. I'll at most a minute. The DCN concept and the way that peer-to-peer communications is envisioned is not too different from currently available technology that's in fielded service. And so that's comment number one. And I guess comment number two on our thinking about the RTAC element of the reference architecture. What we see in telecommunications is, 6 nines, 7 nines availability. So it's certainly a critical design attribute, a critical requirement, but it's not at the top of our list of worries in the initiative right now. And again, I invite Dennis to comment further.
Be muted on your end, Dennis. So when we're done, and we'll come back to that. So expanding on the question about industries that this initiative is going to target, there's a question: is it process only? Looking at the hydrocarbon industry, are you targeting both refining and upstream applications? Don or Mike, do you want to talk to that?
I'll take that. Based on the interest we've had from end users, I think the answer, aligning with Don's earlier one, is absolutely yes. Not just oil and gas, petrochem, pharma, food. We've had increase from different industries. So the forum itself will indeed be a broad users and suppliers to those.
To add to the industry sectors that Mike just mentioned by name, I would include electric power, pulp and paper, mining and minerals. These are we've had companies from all of these spaces reach out to us already.
Can you, Jim, hear me?
Yeah.
And now,
Oh,
Dennis. Why don't you comment on the availability question?
Yes, I was speaking, and for some reason it wasn't through, and my phone was unmuted. On the availability and other quality of service attributes, those are absolutely part of the requirements analysis and documentation for setting the requirements document for the implementation of the system. The attributes that showed in the slides earlier were the top-level attributes, the top-level things such as modularity and interoperability that span, wide-ranging. But those key performance parameters, functional level, are absolutely part of the requirements analysis.
Okay. So another question, and on this one, Don or Dennis, maybe I'll chime in. We're to think yet of how users might migrate from existing environments and reference architectures.
If you like, I can take that one.
Dennis, go ahead.
We've got exactly the same problem in the avionics world. There's the fleet of platforms that are out there spend, many years, tens of years. And so we had to tackle the problem that we can't throw out a system and just totally replace it. That's uneconomical and just it would not be successful. So in the business approach, we looked at, as well as the technical, we looked at methodologies for inserting open architecture into existing legacy platforms. And I can tell you, the approach would be identical for this market space as well. Details, again, it would be an hour, 2-hour discussion, but we look at logical adjunct processing as well as physical adjunct processing and high-speed interconnects to the existing legacy systems. But so we've clearly thought through that because we have got the same problem. We've got a large installed base as well in the avionics world.
And just to comment, so just in the span of my career tenure, I've probably lived through 4 generations of control equipment, and those 3 transitions among those 4 states have all been associated with needs to from the legacy system to the new one, and we absolutely will do that again.
Okay, just a quick note. If you go back and look at that slide on the segmentation, segments like platform-specific services are used as translators. The I/O services are used as translators into legacy subsystems. It's been well thought out in the segmentation of the architecture.
Okay. And there's a couple of questions, again, related to industries and getting various industries captured. So any thoughts about how the various industry verticals are going to be represented in terms of their unique requirements?
I'd like Mike to comment on that.
Well, what envision is that that's going to be part of the very early work of the groups, whether it's a single working group of the technical side to make sure we're gathering requirements, but it's not that dissimilar to what we did in the early days of the FACE Consortium, is to make sure we are indeed, from one, getting interest, and it's also what we're trying to do with the focus on now 2 user days, is to gather requirements, make sure we're capturing any that are unique outside of what ExxonMobil and Lockheed have already been working on.
No reason that the architectures that we're talking about here today are applicable to both continuous process flow as well as batch process flow. We see no issues with respect to the differentiation at that point. The whole idea of the consortium is to bring the users from various areas together and to voice their needs and concerns, and then those are assimilated by the function of the consortium into end product.
Well, we're at the top of the hour, so I guess and close this, respecting everybody's time. There was a question about making the presentations available. We'll get an email out to everyone who registered for this, as well as those who attended, with follow-up information regarding a link to the recording of the event, as well as how to get access to the presentations that were presented. So with that, thank you, Don, Dennis, and Mike, and thank you all for attending. And look forward to seeing you on an Open Group webcast in the near future. Thanks, everyone.